This is the third verse of the Sankya darshan. I shall read it out. Third one. Pratyahika kshu prakaravat tat pratikara cheshtanat purushartatvam. Alright, so I'll break it down into little words so it's possible to understand. So this first word is broken down into this one. Pratyahika kshut prakaravat. This is the first word, alright. It's broken down into Pratyahika kshut prakaravat. So Pratyahika is basically daily, every day. Kshut is hunger. Prakaravat is in the same way as the case of. So this Prakaravat, okay, I'll explain how the breaking actually works. Pratyahika kshut, this is two words which actually conjoin with each other. Now, I know in Sanskrit what happens is you can literally conjoin any word with any other word. Usually there's a habit of just conjoining words with one another and writing an entire sentence as one single word. So in that habit, Pratyahika and kshut and Prakaravat, all of them combine to form one word, which is Pratyahika kshut Prakaravat. But Prakaravat, as such, by the meaning of it, has nothing to do with these two words. It's like this. You want to say there's a flower that is blossoming late. So you can say late blossoming flower. So let me explain the English correlative. Late, and you put a hyphen, blossoming, and then you write flower. But you see, you don't put another line over here because it makes no sense as such. The point is, there's no meaning in combining flower with late blossoming. Late can go with blossoming, and this together as a two-word compound can pretty much describe any other word. You can have a flower, you can have the adolescence of an individual, you can have anything that blossoms can have a late blossoming nature. But the issue here is, as you can see, Pratyahika and kshut make sense. You have daily occurring hunger. So, you have everyday occurring hunger. That actually makes sense. Something that occurs every day, hunger occurs every day. So you can have a hunger. You can write about hunger, saying hunger which occurs every day. So Pratyahika kshut as two words make sense. The way you combine late and blossoming, you can actually combine Pratyahika and kshut. But the issue is combining Prakaravat with these other two words. The point in Sanskrit is it's quite understood. Whether you combine Prakaravat into this two-word compound, Pratyahika and kshut, whether you don't combine, the meaning is pretty much the same in Sanskrit. That is where it differs from English. Now, if I put a line over here, you want to create a meaning from this. You think all these three words would be, describing something else, late blossoming flower, and then you'd be like, of what? So there is something which is of blossoming nature, which is in fact slowly blossoming, and that was delicate as a flower. You think all these three words, when put together with these little hyphens, are going to describe some other word. No, that is not the case in Sanskrit. In fact, I can put a hyphen, the same thing as writing, as I say, late blossoming flower, and expect you to understand the late blossoming compound is for the word flower. It is that crazy. But that is Sanskrit. It is like that. It is for the crazy people. So now, coming back to the point, hence me trying to explain what words are becoming compound and what words are not. It is very important for a person with Western education to understand that, first of all, these two words are together and Prakaravat is not attached to these two words the way you're thinking it is. So I shall draw a line over here, and Pratyahika kshut, I'll draw a line, and that's Prakaravat. So you basically get it over here, like that. Alright, so daily occurring hunger. That's the first thing you need to understand. Now, of course, for hunger, we will get into many things. What is hunger? Hunger is you wanting something, basically food. But then again, think about it. You also are hungry for many things. You're hungry for love, you're hungry for food, you're hungry for a good life, you're hungry for a family, you're hungry for success, you're hungry for education, for poetry, for rhythm, for music. You're hungry for so many things. So hunger in this West, of course, it's not just your typical hunger, but it's hunger in all senses. And by the way, you need to understand, hunger is that. Hunger is not just for food. Hunger is the craving, the desire for all these things. It is the hunger for love. Hunger is also the hunger for love. Hunger is also the hunger for a good life. It's for a family. It's also for music. It's also for rhythm. It is all of that. It is that very primal feeling that you have when you want to live your life that keeps you driving and going forward, that you have every day. You wake up in the morning with hunger to live the life, and that is the sort of hunger we are talking about, and hunger itself is that. The word hunger actually describes that, and hence you can use that word in many different contexts. It isn't the case that hunger was made for just the hunger of food. No, hunger was made to explain the very primal feeling, the instinct that a man has when he is alive in the morning during the wake of day, when he walks around and he wants to live life, his every desire that pushes him forward. A lack of desire never creates hunger. It is desire and the ability to fulfill that desire, and yet not having a situation where he can fulfill it. That is hunger. I'll write it down. What is hunger? Hunger is, first of all, many compounds. Right here we have desire, and we have situation to fulfill desire. We have the ability to, not really the situation, we have ability to fulfill desire, but we do not have the situation where the desire is fulfilled. We don't have a situation to fulfill the desire, but we have ability and we have desire. I'll tell you, basically you are a very smart individual, you want to join a remarkable university, you have it in you to study, you have it in you to get up, make a routine for yourself, you have it in you to understand science, but you don't really have a situation where you will be easily given a seat in the university. That is a situation to fulfill the desire. Situations are basically, see, the reason I say situation to fulfill, it's not that, there's a difference. You have books with you, you have a place to live, you're making some money, you want to go to a university. That is not situation enough. Situation to fulfill desire ought to be everybody understanding that you have a desire. A situation is basically, let me draw a difference. You have a person over here. He acts alone. Alright, he acts alone, he has 4 or 5 things he wants to do, no one really understands what he wants, what he needs, people don't really care about him, he lives by himself, he's trying to fulfill his desires, living a life by himself, whereas there is another man who basically never acts alone. Yes, of course, all the work he does by himself, but he has people who understand. People who understand that he has 4 or 5 things that he needs, and all the responsibilities that fall on his head, responsibilities that fall on the person's head fall so forth. They fall with the condition that he has 4 desires. But responsibilities that fall on this person's head do not fall that way. They don't fall with a prerequisite condition. There is no condition for this person. Condition doesn't exist. What he desires for barely matters. It doesn't matter what this man desires for. The responsibilities fall independent of his desires, but responsibilities here fall dependent on the desires, and hence having people who understand him. That is what it means to have people who understand him, and to have a situation to fulfill the desire, that responsibilities are in accordance with his desires. Here, responsibilities are in accordance with his desires. This is important to understand because the hunger that I'm talking about, it only comes in situations where you don't have, this little situation to fulfill your desire. When you are given type A responsibilities and not type B, this person does not have hunger. If he continuously has people who understands what he needs, what he wants, he has desires, he doesn't have hunger, because he's always given a situation where he can fulfill the desire. He's always given responsibilities that help him to do whatever he wants, or else responsibilities will not be given. Simple. If he finds it very difficult to pursue his career, then his parents will not give him the responsibility of taking care of the house. They'll believe, oh, you already have it very tough. Oh, my son, you have it very tough. So I'll not burden you with all these things or all those things. That is type B responsibility. Type A responsibility, no one cares. You have responsibilities given to you and your life. That's your life. That's what you will figure out from these responsibilities. From within these responsibilities, you will carve a life of your own. Here, you have a life of your own. Responsibilities fall. That's it. So hunger is only something that exists for type A responsibility, not the type B. The ability to fulfill desire with the lack of situation to fulfill desire, that is when hunger comes about. And that is the type of hunger we are talking about here in this verse. They call it suktam, and the Hindus call it suktam, the Brahmins call it suktam, I call it a verse. So the daily occurring hunger, the daily occurring situation, which is true that you have a lot of desires and you want to fulfill them, but you are given type A responsibilities that no one really cares about what you want and don't want in life, and they keep throwing stuff on your head and you keep having to take care of all of it. And if time is left, if time be, then maybe you can work on what you want. That is usually what people have. Now, independently, now you have to come here. Cheshtanat Purushartatvam. So this basically Tat Pratikara Cheshtanat. This word is Tat Pratikara Cheshtanat. This Cheshtanat, they were just explaining the root word Cheshta. In fact, Cheshta itself is not the root word, but Cheshtanat has, how do I say, they're basically 8 it's like this. In Sanskrit it works this way. You have a word. Every word. Words in Sanskrit are a bit different though, I'll let you know. But let me give you an example. So it's like this. You have a flower. You say 1 flower, 2 flower, 3 flower. But fundamentally, the word flower itself does not change. You don't write it different. The spelling of the word flower doesn't change simply because the sentence has 2 flowers or 3 flowers in it. But Sanskrit is a bit like that. If you have 1 flower, then it has a different spelling, so pushpa. But if you have 2 flowers, which I don't remember, the spelling becomes a bit different. If you have 3 flowers, it becomes even more different. So it's a 1, 2, and more than 2 actually have different spellings. So you don't write 2 flowers when you write Sanskrit. You just use that word, which is supposed to have 2 flowers. It is something very popular. People hear Rama, 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 all these things. It's just the word Rama, but written in many different ways. If you want to say that of Rama, for Rama, in Rama's name, all of it is combined and spoken differently. But that's Sanskrit grammar that I will not be speaking here. In that case, in the same way, Cheshta was a word. Cheshtanat is more like a very bad example, but I'll still give it to you. It's like flower and off the flower. I'll just write it down. Though it's not the same correlative. You have a flower and you're going to say off the flower. This is the difference between Cheshta and Cheshtanat. Cheshta is like flower, Cheshtanat is like off the flower, but it's not the off the nat. Cheshtanat, the nat that came here, is not off the. It's something else that I don't exactly remember. But that is Sanskrit grammar. I'm not actually getting quite into it. I myself have to study Sanskrit grammar, actually. That is the reason I'm not explaining all of this. I presently just use ChatGPT to get all the meanings, so I myself don't know the grammatical details of Sanskrit. But after these, but pretty much it's enough to understand the verse, though. After maybe all these darshans are done to a certain extent, then I will get into Sanskrit grammar. Because first you need to read Sanskrit sentences to understand Sanskrit grammar. It's not like English. The usage comes first, then the meaning. You need to understand the feeling when you say cheshtanath, and then you get into the word cheshta. It's not the reverse way around. You first learn English words, and then you learn sentences. In Sanskrit, you have to first learn sentences, and then you understand the words. Because the words, there's no such thing as a word in Sanskrit. People keep doing sandhi all the time. That is, they keep combining words, and they keep making new words. Actually, there's something called root words in Sanskrit. So they're actually written like this with something inside. You actually add a suffix or a prefix, and then you create a word. There are about, I think, 400 to maybe 500 or even maybe 1,000 root words. And you add suffixes and prefixes, and that's how you create words. So even cheshta comes from a root word with a suffix and a prefix. That's how all words are made. So there's no such thing as words in Sanskrit. You make them. So hence it doesn't make sense to learn words in Sanskrit. There is no dictionary in Sanskrit. The only dictionary that would ever make sense in Sanskrit is of the root word dictionary. Root words are prefixed. That is your word if you ever want to know. It's almost as saying... It's almost like saying flower. I'll break it down, that makes no sense. And you say flow and were, as if this is something you add to flow. So it's like flow and you add were, you get flower. Flow and you add toe, you get flow toe, and something like that. That's actually how Sanskrit words are made. And then for flow, you add ka, you get flow ka. And all of them are dependent on flow. And for example, let flow mean delicate right now. So flow plus were, you get, let us say, this flow plus were is something delicate that is alive. Delicate alive. And that ends up being flower. I'm explaining you if only flower was Sanskrit. And then flow plus toe, and let toe basically mean, let us say, so here one more thing, were, it should always mean alive. So you can add were to anything you want to. So if you have another root word, say ko, which is hard, and then you add ko were, so it is actually supposed to mean hard alive, something that is alive and very hard. And if you have something toe, let's say toe means to actually flow, to move. So flow toe would actually be something delicate that flows. Delicate that flows. That's how Sanskrit words are made. So you have something called root words. And these root words have certain meanings. And there's a list of root words. You have like 1,000 maybe. And I don't really remember how many root words are there, but mostly it's like 1,000. And then you have prefixes and suffixes, right? These also have a list of prefixes. It's not like you can add whatever you want. There's a list of prefixes and suffixes. All of them also have meanings. If you add this prefix and suffix to this root word, it means so and so. So it is fixed. So you can take any root word you want, add any suffix you want, and you get that particular version of the root word. And then if you add a prefix, again the entire meaning, again that version of the root word. That's how words are made in Sanskrit. Hence it makes no meaning to learn the words first. A student of Sanskrit cannot learn words. You're supposed to learn sentences. And in all of this, you have your everyday words that you're using. Your everyday stuff like shrut is hunger, pratyahika is like daily. You have your like tat. Tat is like something very, very normal. Tat basically has the meaning of that in English. So tat this, tat that. That is actually how it is said. Tat, and then you're like henceforth this and that, and then even to end the sentence they say tat. So these are normal words that you do use in Sanskrit. Again, the perspective is not the words. but sentences. And what are normal Sanskrit sentences? Once you learn Sanskrit sentences, then you can get into words. Because when you say word, you want to have something that is final. When you say flower, this flower is quite final. You don't have a word inside flower. You don't have something inside the word bucket. That is it. Bucket, that is the end of the bucket, you know. When I say bucket, I mean a bucket. I don't mean something inside. There is nothing inside for me to investigate in English words. But there is. There's a lot inside Sanskrit words. But if you want the actual word of Sanskrit, it's the root word. It pretty much ends there. There's nothing inside the root word to investigate. So the way to learn Sanskrit is actually very simple. It is to start with sentences and then to see how these sentences align themselves. How these sentences go about. How are words aligning themselves? You know, the ridiculous act of basically saying pratyahika kshut and prakara, but basically to say late blossoming flower and basically putting this very act of Sanskrit. It's very interesting that people do that, but hence also difficult to understand. Alright, so I basically am not teaching Sanskrit grammar right now. We will be flowing through sentences. We'll understand how different sentences through the darshanas. More than the Vedas, it's important to go through darshanas because the Vedas have these sentences quite grammatically structured. So unless you understand Sanskrit grammar quite clearly, you will not be able to decipher the Vedas. It is very, very cleverly written only for someone who understands Sanskrit grammar. It isn't even a complete sentence. You have phrases written down which I'll explain this one little thing. Ishetva ujetva vayavahasta. I'll just explain that little thing over here. Ishetva ujetva vayavahasta. Right, Ishe is basically nourishment, fertility. Twa is basically you. Urje is energy. This is the first sentence from Krishna Yajurvedam. Twa is again you. Vayavaha is the breath of life, literally, but in plural form. But that's important to understand. If you didn't know that, nothing would have made sense. Because sta is basically the plural form of being here. Being here. Here it is. It is. But it's plural. So, ishetva. So it's more like O nourishment you. O nourishment you. O energy you. You are the breaths of life. The breath of life, but in again plural, because you're speaking about multiple people at once. Plural. You are the breath of life. Here you are. Here you are. That is what it means. O nourishment you, O energy you, the breath of life you are, here you are. So again, the breath of life you are being plural. So why is it plural over here? It is not because you're talking about two things. No, in fact, it being plural is not because you're talking about nourishment and energy. No, it's plural because the writer wants to say there are many people who are having this scenario. No, it's quite realistically plural in that sense. You're talking about many lives and many breaths of many lives. That is the kind of plural it is. That I'm not talking about one person, I'm talking about multiple people. There's something called breath of life. You take a poetic phrase, breath of life, and then you have breath of life 1, breath of life 2, breath of life 3. That's the kind of plural Sanskrit has. So it's my breath of life, the breath of your life, the breath of my life, the breath of someone else's life. That's what's being talked about here. So they're saying, oh, nourishment and energy, you are the breath of multiple people, of their life. So a very poetic phrase, breath of life. But not just mine, but also of his, also of somebody else's. And oh, you are here. But the oh, you are here, what is here, both nourishment and energy are here. So that is again where the stir comes about, which is plural. Here you have, you see, the breath of life, not just mine, but also someone else's. Hence, this is plural. There are two very different reasons why Vayavaha is plural and why Stha is plural. Vayavaha is plural because I'm trying to say I'm also talking about the breadth of my life, I'm talking about the breadth of your life, I'm talking about the breadth of everyone's life. I'm talking about that. Me saying that nourishment and energy being the breadth of a person's life does not just apply to me, but applies universally to every single living species. Hence me trying to put the plural form of Vayavaha. But Stha, which is supposed to be being here, is plural because you actually have Isha and Urja, which are here in this situation where you're talking about. Not in the sentence, physically in the situation. You are trying to say, oh, nourishment energy, here you are. For I am alive, here you are. And this is all that makes me go forward. But this is also what makes the other person go forward. This is also what makes everyone else live. Hence, plural for Vayavaha, but Stha, which means being here. Physically, you have more than one entities here, which is Urja and Isha, nourishment and energy. Hence, the being here is in plural form. Hence, you need to understand Sanskrit grammar to understand the Vedas. It completely makes no sense otherwise. It makes no sense. So coming back to, hence the darshanas are quite easier than the Vedas because they don't have complicated grammatical structure. So first, to understand Sanskrit, you start with the darshanas because the writing style is a bit different. You might say, oh, why not? I'll read the Puranas, I'll read a story. No, the Puranas have a very Vedic style of writing. The Upanishads also have a very Vedic style of writing. It doesn't really add up or make sense in the beginning. And the Puranas have a lot of pre-context. You can take the Vishnu Purana. It has so much of pre-context. It already expects you to understand the 6 darshanas before entering in the first line. So it starts off with describing Vishnu as Bhagwan, and then they say Bhagwan is someone who has the qualities of Bhag. Again, Bhag is a word which will explain 6 particular qualities, and anyone who has all these qualities that you say Bhag is Bhagwan. So that's how the Vishnu Purana actually starts off. There's so much of what I say is there's so much of play going on between the characters within the gods. There's so much of pre-context needed to understand any Purana that it's not suitable to start first. I started off with Vishnu Purana, I think, 1-2 years ago. It quite made no sense for me, and after trying everything, the Upanishads, the Vedas and the Puranas and the Itihasas, I settled down with darshanas, and this is how I am learning Hinduism right now. This is quite comfortable for me to start off with the darshanas. That too with the Sankhya. It's quite easy compared to all the other things, because Sankhya is the first one you need to learn. If you start off with Nyaya, it expects you to understand a little bit about human psychology and pain, because the first thing about Nyaya would be logic. In fact, not justice, it's all about logic. From logic you learn about justice, but again, justice in Nyaya is what is really justice comes from the fact that can you really give justice to anyone, or is justice something that a person gains by himself? When he understands the kind of pain he is in, then you can give him any justice. Now people claim many things. They say, oh, someone hit me today, give me justice. But what is it? To what exactly are you giving justice? He can be ignorant, that is his place. But as someone who gives him justice, it is your place to exactly understand what is the issue. If you want to understand the issue, you need to understand pain. If you want to understand pain, it all roots back to understanding Sankhya. Darshan. So we come back here to Sankhya over and over and over again, and after that I've understood it is quite the starting point of Hindu philosophy to understand pain. So now we are going to continue talking about this. Pratyahika kshu, daily occurring everyday hunger. We have understood that. Prakaravat, in the same way as the case. You're not going to understand if I explain you Prakaravat and that. So I'm going to go here. Remedy removal, pratikara chestanath, because of striving, making an effort. So this is true, right? You do make efforts every day. You are making every day. Exert oneself. You're exerting every day, you're working hard every day in the remedy, in the removal of what? So it is true. In the removal of this hunger, you do always you want to be in a situation where you don't want to feel helpless. What is this hunger? People randomly throw responsibilities on your face, and you're never given a life where you can do what you want peacefully. One day you want to have a life, but random responsibilities don't fall on you. So you are striving every day to create a place where that sort of hunger doesn't exist. There's healthy hunger, and then there's hunger where it just tires the body. What is healthy hunger? You are given a situation where, yes, you have a lot of desires, you want to work hard, and you want to do something, an unnecessary there's a level of responsibilities that can fall on a person's head. I'm not saying people should understand you, but in this world, even if people don't understand you, there's a difference between people not understanding you and just random responsibilities falling on your head. You can have an independent life, but there's a certain responsibility fixed for every single person. There's a responsibility as a citizen, there is a responsibility as a son, as a husband, as a brother, as a sister, a mother, a wife, a daughter, but then there is this something that extends all of it. There are random responsibilities that fall on you because other people are not fulfilling their responsibilities. That is the kind of situation you do want to clear, remove, and get out of. That is what is being talked about in pratikara. So you do the remedy, the removal of the everyday striving that happens to you, that you do because it's unnecessary. There is a level of responsibility that falls on people. Lives are independent, yes. You having your life will be given family responsibilities whether you want to do something or not. Independent of your career, you have family responsibilities. And yes, you can still have hunger, but independent of family responsibility, a lot of people are just burdened with work because other people are not doing it. In the requirement of where to run, people are burdened with responsibilities. Naturally, just naturally happens. Because some people in the company don't work, other people are overburdened. It's very simple. It's an economical thing. Lower salary people are overburdened because the higher salaries one don't work. Whoever needs a job more naturally is overburdened because they naturally take it because they are in a situation where they need money. And in the name of money, people are being overburdened. And that is what people want to get out of. That is what is being spoken about here. Because of the striving, because of the effort made by a person to remove what? It's unnecessary situation. You only remove things that are unnecessary. You never remove that which is necessary. To remove this unnecessary situation, we strive every day. So it is important to understand that Sankya Darshan already understands or expects from you to understand that you are living in unnecessary situations. It is true. You must understand. A lot of unnecessary things are falling on your head, and that is your reality. You first understand that. And then you make a list of these unnecessary things. Sankya Darshan is expecting that from you. If you don't make a list of all the unnecessary things happening to you, then there's no point of doing this darshan. There's no point of coming to this lecture. There's no point of, let us say, even doing the course. You will not pass the course by writing fancy lines in English as an explanation. You pass the course by making a list of unnecessary things falling on your head. When you make a list, and then when you say, I shall remove it, pratikar that. You're supposed to use Sanskrit words in English to understand them, or else you'll never understand them. I will say pratikar that. I will say removal of that. That's how I understand. So yes, when you want to pratikar the list of unnecessary events going on in your life, you understand the crux of the verse. You understand what the man is trying to say. So he says, the daily occurring hunger. Alright, and the daily occurring hunger. Now, in the same way as the case of that what? That what? Which has not been described in the sentence, by the way. That is not the hunger, by the way. That which occurs every day is the unnecessary situation. Just as you have your hunger, which comes from desire, which comes from being unable to fulfill, you must understand this ridiculous hunger also comes because you have unnecessary situations falling on your head. Such a ridiculous hunger will not exist if you had a normal life, is the entire point. In the same way as the case of that unnecessary situations. That is the point. What is that? In the same way as the case of that unnecessary situations that you want to remove because you are striving and making an effort, that is the purpose sought by a person, which is true. That is what you want to do. But that is one little thing which has not been told in the verse, which is something you need to understand. They'll just say that what? That this. Unnecessary situations. Prakaravat tat. That what? That tat is this. Unnecessary situations is that. Just the way you have hunger, you have these unnecessary situations. Because you have these unnecessary situations, you have hunger. That comes every day. And so these unnecessary situations come on you every day. So now I read again. Daily occurring hunger in the same way as the case of that, the unnecessary situation, removal because of striving, making an effort, purpose sought by a person. The purpose sought by a person is the removal of everyday occurring hunger because of making an effort to strive. But because you make an effort to strive, you remove this hunger. Now, this is how I write it. You can write it however you want to write it, but it is important to take the Sanskrit line and write it in English, whatever language you are comfortable in, to understand it completely. Now, say it in Sanskrit. Pratyahika, everyday occurring. Pratyahika kshut. That, yes, pratyahika, everyday occurring kshut. Kshut is occurring every day. Kshut pratyahika. So, pratyahika kshut. Prakaravat tat. Exactly, in the same way as the case of that. That varies, so you need to understand, you need one more little thing going on. Looks like in the time realm where they were writing this, it was as common as, that little thing we're all struggling with every day. It is that common. Looks like the fact that people are having unnecessary situations on their head was as common that every single man knew of it. So common, he didn't even write in the verse. It is so common, you didn't even have to say it out loud. Like, will you say the sun is bright yellow in color? It's like the sun, you know the color. Why would you say it? Everybody knows the color of the sun, so that sun, that yellow thing in the sky, everyone knows. When I say the yellow thing in the sky, what thing? You don't ask what thing. It's the sun, everyone knows it. Apparently, looks like everybody were so well informed about these unnecessary situations falling on their head. The Brahmins, I say now, quite clever people, that they didn't even have to write it down. It was that obvious for them, these unnecessary situations. So, pratyahika kshut, the daily occurring hunger, prakaravat tat, in the same way as, these unnecessary situations fall on our head every day, pratikara cheshtanat. Now, because I am working every day, I want to pratikar that. You have to read it reverse. Because I am working hard every day, I can reverse it. I want to reverse it. Because of striving and making an effort, I do a counter-attack. So, cheshtanat pratikar, same thing as pratikar cheshtanat. You need to understand that whether you are working hard to counter-attack it, or whether you want to counter-attack and you start working, it is all the same thing. Sanskrit is philosophy. And at the end, purushartatvam. That's the purpose sought by me. So, I now read the line, pratyahika kshut prakaravat tat pratikar cheshtanat purushartatvam. That is the meaning of this line. But it is very important to understand the situation where a person can write these things, the thinking, the psychology of the person, how obvious these unnecessary situations are, unless the situation becomes, the unnecessary situation, unless it becomes that obvious to you. There's no point in learning the fourth verse. Fundamentally, no point. You must not go to this next verse unless it is that obvious that unnecessary situations are falling on you. You must have a bunch of scholars around you, at least one more person with whom you can be like, after these unnecessary situations so commonly understood. Unless it is that common, the next verse will not make sense because it will be based on this. It is the next sentence of a conversation. By the way, these are conversations in Sanskrit. Very casually people were saying this and that was written down. The next sentence of course depends on the previous one. Even the next verse, if you want to make it a textbook, still the next whatever theorem depends on the theorem before. Fundamental understanding is required. That is it for the third verse.